with a degree in human ecology from the College of the Atlantic. Chellie Pingree started in organic farms on the island of North Haven, Maine, selling produce to summer residents and raising sheep for wool turned into a thriving mail-order knitting business that eventually employed 10 people in her small community. Chellie is still a small business owner today, owning Nebo Lodge and Restaurant in New Haven, which features locally grown food. In addition, she and her husband own and operate Turner Field on the island, a diversified organic farm that provides produce, meat, and cheese to Nebo Lodge and is sold at a farm stand and the local farmers market. I was going to say Turner Field, but it's Turner Farm. After serving on the local school board and as the town's tax assessor, Chellie went on to serve 8 years in the Maine Senate. She became the national CEO of Common Cause and in 2008 was elected to represent Maine in the United States Congress. Chellie wrote the Local Farms Food and Jobs Act, a comprehensive package of reforms to agriculture policy that will expand opportunities for local and regional farmers, and again make it easier for consumers to have access to healthy food. Many of the provisions of Chellie's bill were included in the Farm Bill. She was one that stood amongst the many and went across the aisle and gathered support for the Farm Bill which was passed. Such as it is, it would not have been had it not been for our next and our keynote speaker for this morning, Congresswoman Chellie Pingree of Maine. Let's give her a round of applause.
Well, good morning, I guess, still morning. Anyway, thank you very much, Gary, for that kind introduction, and really thank you for that wonderful song this morning. That was a good way to start the day. And to our early morning prayer and our wonderful speakers and such an inspirational person as Will Allen, thank you all for including me in this fascinating conference and letting me be a part of the dialogue today. And thank you for all the great work that all of you in the audience do, and I think all the great things that will happen during this conference. I'm very disappointed I can't stay because I can tell you're going to know everything about the nuts and bolts of farming, the philosophy behind it, the justice issues that we all face. I think it's going to be a fascinating, wonderful time. And again, thank you to Will for being the inspiration for all of this and everyone else who's helped to make it possible. I just wanted to point out, I have one of my staff people here with me, Brooke Barron, who will be here at the entire conference. You can't miss her. She has red hair. And she worked at the USDA for 4 years before she came to our office. So if you have any follow-up questions or you don't get a chance to connect with me while I'm here, make sure you let Brooke know anything we can do to be helpful or any way we can participate. So, a lot has already been said on this great first panel, and thank you to everyone on the first panel and all of you for the work we do, but I'm going to try to whip through some thoughts and ideas and just give you my perspective on some of the activities going on in Washington and going on in this really critically important movement. So we all come here from very diverse backgrounds. You all have a whole variety of things that you're doing. A lot of you are very involved in urban activities. It's ironic that I'm your keynote speaker this morning because I represent the most rural state in the nation, that's Maine. And actually, I have to say we're also the whitest state in the nation. So our diversity level is actually quite low, but many of the issues that our small rural farmers and our small urban areas are facing, and of course many of the policy issues that I work on, are all the same as what all of you are dealing with. You all came here for different reasons. You come to the issue of farming for different reasons. And I'll just give you a few little things about how I got here, some of which you already heard from my bio. Now, I do want to just take it to Westerners here today. So this is actually a picture of my family farm. I'm from Scandinavian immigrants, and half of my grandparents were Norwegian, half Swedish. So this is Kenyon, Minnesota, and a wonderful woman with a hat is my grandmother, because all good grandmothers went out to the fields with a hat on. And my uncle, and I'm actually the little girl with blonde hair looking at the pig. So I got to start there, but like very few people I knew in Minnesota, I went out east in 1970. Went there for my last year of high school. I met a boy and ended up reading a book called Living the Good Life by Helen and Scott Nearing, which was the guide for a lot of people who went east, wanted to go back to the land, and wanted to look at sustainable agriculture before we were talking about it the way we do today. I was lucky enough to go to College of the Atlantic because there weren't a lot of agriculture schools you could go to in those days that taught sustainable agriculture. And one of my teachers was Elliot Coleman, who continues to be one of the great resources in organic farming today. I went from there, this is actually my work-study job, so I knew composting when. I worked my way through college composting the kitchen garbage at the College of the Atlantic, and then went on to start my own farm in 1975. I did so, as you heard, on a small island off the coast of Maine, where we only have 400 residents. I had 3 milking cows, a couple acres of vegetables, and sold my eggs door to door. I raised my kids there, and we weren't mainstream. The idea of organic farming wasn't, you know, it was kind of hippie Birkenstock idea that people were a little suspicious about. But I will say there were a lot of us in those days taking on this issue, and I noticed Johnny Selected Seeds has a packet here, and they're represented here, and Rob Johnson, the founder, was one of the founders of Johnny Selected Seeds and was part of what we were doing in Maine those days. I do want to just personally say the little girl holding the pig is my grown-up daughter who was the Speaker of the House in Maine for a while, so it's good background to have. You heard, actually I heard Bill saying it earlier, that was the era of Earl Butz, the Secretary of Agriculture, and the trends in our country were, you know, get big or get out. We had a very different view of what agriculture was meant to be in the future than we're looking at it now. I was lucky enough to become elected to the legislature in Maine in the 1990s, so 20 years after I first started my farm. I actually went to the legislature, and I heard the senator say earlier that her punishment was the Ag Committee, and I think mine was the same. They told me I could be on the Economic Development Committee if I would fill a slot on agriculture. But in those days, agricultural policy, even though we discussed GMOs and irradiated food and bovine growth hormone, anybody who was on the side that many of us are today was really marginalized, had no voice, and for the most part, the public didn't know what we were talking about. I served 8 years in the legislature, and then, as you heard, in 2008, I was lucky enough to be elected to Congress, serving on the Agriculture Committee. Now I'm on the Agriculture Appropriations Committee, and for the last 6 years, I've really focused on working on the Farm Bill and all of the issues that so many of you are working so hard on in your daily work. It's a very, very different world, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about. 40 years later, having been there when this wasn't a popular topic, today it is amazingly well understood by the public, and I think we can do a lot more than we're doing in public policy. You heard that I still have a farm. I'm lucky enough, as you heard, to own a farm called the Turner Farm. And what's wonderful for me is that means every time I sit on a discussion on my committee or with my colleagues, we may not all have the same kinds of farms, but I certainly know what it's like to be a farmer. I've been doing it for 40 years. And I have the opportunity to also own a restaurant, sell to the public. We have a wintergreen CSA, and we're very involved in our community school lunch program. So in every way, I can give people a sense of what happens hands-on. We grow a lot of our food in coop houses because we're on the coast of Maine, where it's not as cold as Milwaukee, but cold and wet and windy. And so for us to get a tomato when the customers are there in the middle of summer, we have to start them early. And this year we started heated hoop houses that are heated with waste wood, so also a way to use a wood product, and for us to start our greens and tomatoes much earlier, also to have a year-round CSA. So we're very involved in how do you deliver food to a community all year round. We raise dairy goats, cows, they all pose for pictures so well, and pigs and beef, so we try to have a diverse farm operation. And I know firsthand the excitement of every customer who comes to our farm and is so anxious to line up and buy at the farmer's market, get our goat cheese, or any of the other products. And I also understand, many of the people who are here today have been working on the Food Safety Modernization Act, how difficult and complicated it is to find the interface between food safety and reasonable regulations for the small to medium-sized farmers. So I can guarantee you that whether it's talking about the small dairy, the aggregate farmer, the farm stand, or spent grains or some of the other issues, I am always right there in the face of the USDA or the FDA to talk about what it really is like to have to test your water every month, or some of the crazy things about manure that have come up before us. It all makes sense to me. I also run a small poultry processing operation. We raise meat chickens, and we process them all on our own farm, so we have a certified slaughterhouse, and that also gives me the opportunity to talk to people about exactly how that works and some of the infrastructure challenges of not having enough capacity for the small farms that need to process their meat. And it also means that when I explain to my colleagues that I do this sometimes on the weekends, and I am an excellent eviscerator, that's me in blue, it's a good thing to tell your colleagues in Congress that you're very good at eviscerating chickens. And I feel confident no one else has that skill. So I don't think I have to dwell too much on the challenges that we're facing today with being so dependent on big agriculture, so I'll move quickly here, but I think all of you are here because you know we are at a crisis point. We cannot continue to grow our food in this way for a whole variety of reasons. We all know about pollinator collapse, about the issues around the monarch, and some of the rules that are going down about herbicides, and how it's having so many unintended consequences to so many other species. We have an enormous loss of topsoil. We're faced with drought in some of our food-producing areas. We have severe weather that's affecting us in all kinds of places. We have so many toxins in our ground and in our food that we have to worry about today. And conventional agriculture is one of the biggest carbon producers, pollutants. It's one of our big environmental issues, and we just cannot continue this way. This is a slide just reminding all of us that your food travels about 1,400 miles on average before it gets to your house, and that takes 7 to 14 days. So how is that even close to fresh? And why do we need to spend so much money trucking or flying our food around? So I came to Congress 6 years ago, and I was hoping to find a great group of colleagues to work with who are interested in this issue, and I have, but they're not as large as I expected. Given the interest on the part of the public and the work that all of you are doing and the huge growth and interest in this, I frankly thought that 6 years ago there would be lines of members of Congress ahead of me in seniority who wanted to take on this issue, and I found out that there just weren't that many. Not that they don't care about it eventually, but not that they made it their priority. So I did write a title to the Farm Bill called the Foods, Farms, and Jobs Act, and worked very closely with the work around the Farm Bill to get many of those items in there included. We had huge co-sponsorship in Congress, so like I said, many of your representatives were happy to sign on, but not too many people dig in on this issue or understand how popular it is with the public. The Farm Bill. This is the shortest tutorial you'll ever have, and many of you already know about this, but the Farm Bill is almost $1 trillion, comes up every 5 roughly years, or around 5 years, whenever Congress can either get around to it or agree on it. Most importantly, this little pie chart gives you a sense of how it's broken down, but the food stamps and nutrition programs are really the bulk of what is in the Farm Bill, and it's a complex negotiation that happened a long time ago when urban areas who needed the support with buying food met up with the farmers who were going to sell more food, and it became sort of the combination of nutrition and agriculture policy. But our assistance on food issues in the SNAP program has grown so big, you can see what a huge chunk it is. Crop insurance, conservation, commodity programs take the rest, and then many of the things that we care most about are the last $8.2 billion. But you can see why some of the most contentious issues in the Farm Bill and the difficulty in passing it is around philosophical differences about how much are we going to help people who struggle to make ends meet to put food on the table, which in my opinion shouldn't be such a big point of conversation. Here's some good news in the Farm Bill, and thankfully the last panel actually mentioned many of these things, so I'm going to be kind of quick with these, but these are some of the good things that you've heard about today, and we're happy to make sure you get plenty more information. One of the best is the $100 million to help people receive SNAP benefits. This is replicating a pilot program that's happened in many places, sometimes called the Double Bucks program. So if you show up at a farm stand with your SNAP card, you actually get twice as much food for your money. And that's a great thing, because when we say people have a hard time finding healthy sources of food, that's a great way to support people who would like to have the opportunity to buy more of it. $150 million in funding to increase farmers market and local food promotion. These things I think some of you have already heard about today: the organic cost share program, organic crop insurance, which was a long fight, and doing a surcharge for crop insurance, diversified insurance, which is also very helpful for the small farmer who's not just, or medium sized, who's not just growing one crop like cotton, but you want to cover all your things, all the things you're growing. $200 million for the specialty crop block grant program, which is how most of our states get the money that they hand out to help farmers, and the commodity food projects funding, which was doubled by the Farm Bill. So just a quick little thing of issues that have already been mentioned, and these are just pictures of things like assistance for hoop houses and value-added producers grants that you heard about earlier. Now, just on to the bad news about the Farm Bill. So we had a huge fight on SNAP benefits, and I guess some people would say we've got it down to $8 billion from a much higher number, but that's still unthinkable that in a time when people are still struggling, we cut benefits to people who need our help. There wasn't really any serious subsidy payment reform, which is the thing that most of us are so concerned about and wish the bulk of our money wasn't spent out. There wasn't serious crop insurance reform. And conservation funding, which has been critically important to a lot of states to make sure we didn't plant fence row to fence row and farmers had support to do that, was cut, and that's quite unthinkable. One last little thing about this. So what most of us grow is under this category of specialty crops. So we have our commodities: corn, wheat, cotton, peanuts. Those are the big crops that get all the subsidies. And then everything else, the food you put on the table every day, the tomatoes, the lettuce, the summer squash, winter squash, eggplants, those are specialty crops. So go figure. I mean, that's the food we eat every day, but that's how they're described.